welcome to Solar Alberta's 2023 Solar Show. Today's session is called Building Equity in the Solar Sector. Please note that we have enabled closed captioning for this presentation. You can turn on the captioning in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be recording this session and making it available on our website and YouTube channel following the show. My name is Kim Stadelman, and I am the Board Vice President at Solar Alberta. I am hosting you today from Amiskawahihegin, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is located on Treaty 6 territories, the homelands of the Métis Nation. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional gathering place and home of many Indigenous people, including the Papachase, Nahiawak, or Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Blackfoot, and Nakota Sioux nations, whose ancestors have cared and nurtured for these lands since time immemorial. We're delighted to have so many people register this week and for this event. To start, we'd like to thank the City of Edmonton Change for Climate for sponsoring the 2023 Solar Show. Their support of our work enables us to offer extensive free and affordable programming. Today, we will be hearing from two informative speakers about techniques to create a more equitable solar workforce, how Solar Alberta is walking the talk, and what programs and policies can help a wider variety of people benefit from solar generation in Alberta. Following the presentation, there will be a question and answer period, which you can all participate in. The entire session will wrap up in about an hour and a half. So on this, this is an online conference and trade show. So I'd like to encourage you all to check out our online trade show during the week. We have listed on this slide and in the chat all the wonderful organizations who are participating in the trade show. To view their exhibitor booths, which include a listing of key solar related services, contact info, and video introduction, please click on the link in the chat. During our formal Q&A period, we will be using the Zoom Q&A for questions rather than the chat box. So please enter your questions into the Q&A section. Also, click on the little thumbs up symbol to upvote the questions you like, so they're higher on the list and will be prioritized. Before we move forward, we're going to do a quick poll to get a sense of who will be joining us today. Please take a minute to answer the question popping up on your screens now. While some of you are taking the poll, I also encourage you to take a minute, pop your name, land acknowledgement, and any other contact info you're comfortable sharing in the chat now and throughout the event so that others can look you up on LinkedIn and relationships can begin to be formed. Wonderful. Thanks so much for participating. It's always helpful to know a little bit about our audience. So lots of people feeling curious, some industry professionals, so a great mix, and some students. It's great to have you all here today joining us. We love knowing who you are before we dive in. So now a little bit about Solar Alberta. Solar Alberta is in its 32nd year of operation. We're a not-for-profit society that's dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, educating, and serving as industry and community hub for solar energy. Our membership is made up of over 360 individuals and businesses. To keep up to date on all our activities, please sign up for our newsletter at solaralberta.ca. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we can act as a bridge for installers, suppliers, and other solar-related businesses to connect with their customers and clients. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on the slide and a link in the chat. In addition to our website services, we run educational programs such as this solar show, our Thursday lunch hour seminar series. We also host in-person and online networking events. Our next online networking event is for women and non-binary folks working or interested in working in the solar sector and related fields. We are hosting this on March 8th over the lunch hour to celebrate International Women's Day. Binu Jackamar from the Pabina Institute will share insights of her experience at COP27 prior to the networking component. We're popping the registration link in the chat now. Please note that the recordings of the 2021 and 2022 solar show sessions and seminars can also be found on our Solar Alberta YouTube channel. We have a lot going on this spring. In addition to industry-oriented solar workshops, we are once again offering a number of online courses for solar industry professionals or those transitioning into the sector. Our 7 courses are held online on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and it's 3 to 5 nights over 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the course you select. Registration is currently open for all of our courses, and you can register at the link provided in the chat. If the course you're interested isn't offered in a time that works best for you, you can now pay to download most of our past course content. These recorded courses are available alongside our paid workshops in the new solar training video section of our website. We'd like to take this opportunity to encourage you to join Solar Alberta as a member. During Solar Show from February 6th to 10th only, you can purchase a individual or student membership with a 20% discount. We're sharing the link to become a Solar Alberta member in the chat now. I'd like to also invite you to join us for our annual general meeting on April 5th. The AGM is open to all solar members, and we will elect a new board of directors at that time. There are currently 4 vacancies to fill on the board, so if you're interested in applying to serve on the board, please submit your application on our website. Applications will be accepted until February 26th. If you can't quite commit to serving on the board, but are interested in supporting the work that we're doing at Solar Alberta, please consider becoming a general volunteer. You can find the link to sign up as a general volunteer in the chat. We're happy to announce that moving forward, we will be recognizing longtime dedicated contributors to solar in Alberta by gifting them a free lifetime Solar Alberta membership. If you're currently a Solar Alberta individual or business member and you know someone who has contributed significantly to the organization or the solar sector in Alberta as a whole, please consider nominating them for this award. We'll be accepting nominations until March 22nd, and the award recipients will be announced at our AGM. And finally, we'd like to recognize and appreciate everyone who has already donated to Solar Alberta. Donations like yours help us continue to offer free public education and affordable and professional development like the Solar Show. Today, we ask that you consider participating in our 50/50 raffle. The 50/50 ticket sales will close Friday, February 10th, and our executive director will be doing the draw live at 8 p.m. on the Friday during the Stories from Solar Sector Workers and Networking Night. Should be a great time. I hope you all can make it. Additionally, consider donating through the crowdfunding link in the chat. The Government Alberta is matching all donations made through this link till the end of the week. So if you're able to donate, your money is essentially doubled by the Government of Alberta. It's a great way to support Solar Alberta. The links to participate in both fundraisers can be found in the chat below. Now to the reason we're all here. I'm delighted to get this session underway by introducing our two speakers, Heather McKenzie and Preet Kang. Heather is the Executive Director of Solar Alberta. She's a seasoned leader, community organizer, and green business advocate. Prior to becoming the Executive Director of Solar Alberta, she worked as a government relations professional, ran her own business, and served as an elected trustee on the Edmonton Public School Board. She is in midst of completing her master's in public administration and has a master's in international development and has an undergraduate degree in both sociology and history. She believes that investing in solar is a very concrete way that the everyday Albertan can take a meaningful action on climate change. Preet is the president of Solar Alberta. She is truly passionate about renewable energy and climate action. Preet's formal education in chemical engineering has led to the understanding that the way energy is produced has a lasting effect on our world. She believes that satisfying the increasing energy demand while maintaining sustainability and equity is huge and complex issue in our communities. As a youth, she's curious about this challenge, eager to delve into and support the opportunities that promote climate policy and clean technology. Preet is currently the energy transition campaigner at Alberta Environmental Network and is working to advance a just transition in Alberta as the province moves to low carbon economy. I will now pass the mic over to Heather and Preet and look forward to diving into the Q&A with you all after.
Hello, and thank you for the introduction, Kim. In our presentation today, Heather and I will take a deep dive into various tools and techniques for enhancing equity in Alberta's solar workforce. Following that, we will shift the presentation to discuss some of the steps we are taking at Solar Alberta to ensure we are more equity-oriented in the work that we do. Lastly, we will discuss enhancing equity in terms of those generating or producing and hence benefiting from solar energy in Alberta. Before we begin, it is important to acknowledge that people working in the solar sector or hoping to transition into it hold many unique identities. Because of this, some people with many intersecting equity-deserving identities related to such things as race, class, and gender often experience more barriers to solar sector involvement than others. We will be weaving reflections on this concept of intersectionality throughout our presentation.
Thanks, Preet, and hello as well to everyone. I'm going to now get into some more concrete tools that folks can use to demonstrate that they care about their staff in a holistic way. So just digging right into the content here. First up, paying a living wage. You probably saw that one coming. That's really important, to pay a living wage to all staff right out of the gate. It's an important tool that employers can use to enhance diversity in the workforce. Alberta's Living Wage Network is one source you can turn to for determining what a living wage is, and it will differ depending on where your staff are in the province or across the country. Secondly, offering benefits or cash in lieu of benefits, ample paid vacation, paid sick leave, and paid personal leave for doctor's appointments and the like can also demonstrate that you care about your staff in mind, body, and spirit, and that you want new staff who are differently able or who have extended family needs to join your team. And next, offering stable and permanent employment rather than contracting out will be more likely to result in those who have less financial ability to tolerate risk joining your workforce.
A fourth technique employers can use to address barriers to equity is to develop more flexible jobs and inclusive job postings. As an example of a phrase that we typically use in our job postings, you could state post-secondary degree or diploma in a related field is preferred. A combination of education and equivalencies will be considered. In short, don't force candidates to check a lot of specific boxes unless the boxes are absolutely necessary for the position. We also recommend that you discuss employment terms regularly with your staff. A routine workload review can help to resolve work-life challenges before they lead to undue stress or to employees jumping ship. And ultimately, equity-deserving demographics are the most likely to need periodic contract adjustments, as their lives are often less predictable and they often have more external demands on their time than those with relatively more privilege and power in society. Another suggestion that we have learned about from experts in this field is to provide equity-deserving employees with opportunities to network, gain exposure, learn, build capacity, and advance. Ultimately, professional development funds and financial supports for staff to attend networking events are a great way to accomplish these goals. However, often establishing funding for these types of opportunities is a barrier for organizations. An alternative solution to consider is to enable employees to attend courses and workshops or to participate on related external board and task forces while on the job.
All right, here are the last two suggestions we have for techniques or tools you can use to address barriers to equity in your workplace. First up, be welcoming and open to change. Don't expect everyone to conform to your pre-existing work culture. This photo from the Civic Issues website of Penn State sums up that point well, in that in order to achieve more equitable and diverse workplaces, we should aim to achieve a solid bowl of cultures rather than a melting pot. As Roberta Giroux from Tradewinds to Success pointed out at our webinar called Mind the Gap, it is important to recognize that some people don't just experience a feeling of being unwelcome or lonely in our workplaces. Some, such as many Indigenous people, experience outright hostility from managers, coworkers, or clients. One way she suggested to address outright racist or hostile work environments for Indigenous workers in particular is to raise awareness with all staff about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. Roberta has seen this approach in action and believes it is helping to improve work culture in the electrician industry. And last but not least, we encourage you to consider different impacts of policy or practice on different demographics. To help accomplish this goal of understanding different impacts of policy and practice, the Government of Canada offers a gender-based analysis plus GBA plus training, and it is free and easy to take yourself online. And also, we would be remiss if we did not end this section by asking folks who are thinking through policy and practice impacts to please do some of your own research. There are a lot of resources out there to help you on your way. As Marcy Horanick, the founder of Canadian Equity Consulting, says, don't lean on others to teach you. Too often, employers and employees rely on their underrepresented colleagues to answer questions about how they should act or what they should say. It can be emotionally demanding for marginalized people to field questions from their peers, especially at work. So on that note, we're going to move on to what Solar Alberta is doing to walk the talk, and we'll let you know about some of the resources we're providing to help folks educate themselves.
As Solar Alberta has hundreds of members moving and shaking in the solar sector, we realize that we have an important role to play with respect to culture setting. We will now review some of the internal operations we have adopted to build a more inclusive organization. We will then delve into how we have updated our public services and programs to better embed the notion of equity. Lastly, we will review how we have updated our member services to serve the same purpose.
So first up, prior to my starting with Solar Alberta, they had already begun to achieve significant diversity at the board level. This was part of what attracted me to the organization. They often have half or nearly half women on the board, and the current board spends a number of months each year working to recruit diverse members, and then review and recommend a slate of diverse members to the membership at the AGM. They actively think about things such as having diverse expertise, regional representation, diverse ethnic and gender representation, and much more. Another way that our board is striving to enhance our internal operations is by establishing an ESG committee. ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. This committee now oversees and seeks to improve our commitment to a wide range of topics, including enhancing diversity and inclusion within Solar Alberta. A third way that we are walking the talk is by becoming a living wage employer. I'm pleased to announce that we have recently received our certification with Alberta Living Wage Network, and we are encouraging our business members to do similarly. Next, as mentioned earlier, we have updated and continuously update our job postings to attract more diverse applicants. We've had some success attracting more diverse candidates by communicating in gender-neutral tone, by publicizing flexible hours, and most importantly, by being transparent about wage, pay, and benefits. Of course, providing paid internship opportunities is also important. Providing paid internship opportunities is important. This is something Eco Canada is really encouraging. A lot of people will do unpaid internships, but that's not really great from an equity perspective. It's also important to work towards hiring interns on after they have completed their internship. More and more grant providers are recognizing the importance of this, and I'm proud to say that our public outreach lead started as a volunteer with Solar Alberta, then was successful in becoming an intern with Solar Alberta, and now has been managing an entire program area for Solar Alberta since her internship ended a year ago. Another step we've taken in the last few years is to transition to a remote workplace. This flexibility has enabled us to attract and retain employees who live in more rural and remote locations. It has also enabled people with immunosuppressed family members, such as myself, to continue to operate during the COVID pandemic. We have more recently realized that while a remote office is beneficial for many from an equity perspective, it is not ideal for those who require more hands-on training or coaching in their work. As such, we are considering some additional flexible models in the future that might allow staff to participate in co-working spaces with their colleagues, should they so desire or require. The next point might sound mundane, but as we have grown in size, we've begun routinely and formally collecting staff feedback, and we have attempted to do so in a relatively anonymous way. Asking open-ended questions about organizational ethics and many of the points listed in the previous section of this presentation has resulted in extremely important feedback and information to improve our workplace. And last but certainly not least, we have become a routine process of reflecting on who is not at the table, who is not feeling welcome to contribute at the table, and ultimately whether we need to destroy some tables and create new ones. As Sandy Hudson, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Toronto, suggested in the CBC interview referenced in this slide, some tables are just not that great.
Now, we're going to shift into some of the ways that we have been working to improve our public services and programs. Beginning in 2021, we started collecting demographic data from our events, as well as tracking and reporting on this information. Of course, it was a bit unusual and awkward at first to ask about demographic data, but we worked hard to overcome some of the challenges with doing so, and now have significant information about who we are and are not reaching. This data has directly informed our program and event planning in the previous year, and it will continue to do so in perpetuity. Next, we offer both online and in-person events on variable days and at different times. As we discussed earlier, flexibility is key to increasing an organization's reach, both internally and externally. Additionally, recognizing that a lot of women and other equity-deserving demographics working in the solar sector often feel isolated, and that many do not even consider entering the sector because they don't know or see anyone like them in the space, we have prioritized ensuring diverse speaker lineups and representation over the past few years. We also more routinely pay speaker fees and are also requesting speaker fees ourselves. In our experiences, there is something we have noticed. When searching for presenters for our events, quite often the men who speak have employers who pay them to speak on the clock. This is the opposite for women we ask to speak, who are not often in the same position and therefore are being asked to speak voluntarily. It is important to consider the situation of the person you are asking to speak. Are they participating and attending on the clock or voluntary or not-for-profit time? In the latter two instances, it is important to offer a speaker fee, and that can make all the difference in whether or not they can have that time to come and speak. Lastly, recognizing that many of our event attendees are differently able, we have adjusted logistics, including enabling captions at our online events and adding more informal meeting gatherings at the end of each of our formal webinars to encourage attendees to unmute and ask questions directly if they are not able to type questions in the webinar Q&A. There is, of course, much more work we hope to do in this regard.
Yes, thanks, Preet. And next up, we have actually launched and are expanding multilingual public programming. This has helped us reach more newcomers, as well as more women and older demographics. Paying to promote events to women directly and ensuring the language we use in promotions is appealing to women is another technique we have used to increase their participation. We have noticed, for example, that women are much more likely to attend events when we use the language 101. For example, we're doing EVs 101 this week, Solar 101. And if we say introduction to, women often come to that. So introduction to community generation, or how to do community generation. So by adjusting our language and our program lineups, we saw 20% more women at our 2022 events than in 2021. And we wouldn't have even known that if we hadn't started collecting demographic data in 2021. Realizing that our professional development classes were attracting upwards of 85% men, we recently developed a diversity discount code of 20% off for courses. And of course, this has received some pushback for those who don't realize that we are attracting so few women and other minorities. But we really feel it's worthwhile. So this discount code applies to all equity deserving demographics. And of course, welcome you folks as well, if you are equity deserving, to reach out to us if you would like the code. In keeping with this same theme, we're also in the midst of soliciting new sponsors for a new diversity scholarship we're hoping to award. We're hoping to award $2,000 to equity deserving students who are registered in any renewable training program in Alberta. So again, keep your eyes out for anyone who who'd like to sponsor that. Last but certainly not least, we have significantly expanded our partnerships with equity-oriented organizations over the past 2 years. We are very proud now to be working alongside organizations such as the Black Environmental Initiative, Women in Renewable Energy, Relay Education, which is oriented towards youth, Iron and Earth, and Step Up to welcome more Albertans to the energy transition. We're also good friends with Empower Me, who were the first that we know of to offer so extensive multilingual programming for energy efficiency. So really pleased to be able to work alongside so many wonderful organizations.
In addition to improving our public services, we have also been actively working to enhance our member services. It has always been important to Solar Alberta to ensure that the same level of excellent service is provided to all members, regardless of their size or ability to pay. We do charge big businesses more than small ones for membership, but the only member service that varies with price is the number of employees who can take our courses at a discounted rate. We have additionally started a new group health benefits plan to enable our members to walk the talk and become excellent employers who will then naturally attract more diverse employees. Thirdly, last January, the board took the decision to begin formally advocating as a core component of our mission. We are thoughtful to ensure that our lobby efforts benefit big and small solar businesses alike, as well as individual solar enthusiasts and all those who we hope to welcome into the movement. And last, the motivation for this entire presentation. We have developed a new page on our website that outlines a wide variety of inclusive employer resources. These are intended to enable our members and others to walk the talk with us. I hope you will check them out.
Now that we've taken a look at the workforce situation and what we are doing at Solar Alberta specifically, let's talk about the bigger picture. It will be no secret to any of you that the majority of people with solar on their homes are a very privileged and select demographic. Until recently, solar has been extremely cost prohibitive for most Albertans. That is beginning to change, and we now have more than 10,800 installations on homes and businesses in Alberta. However, for those who are equity deserving and still facing many barriers to achieving financial stability in their household, it is important to remember what Yasmin Abraham of Empower Me has taught us. Cash is king. She explained in a recent presentation about embedding equity in energy efficiency financing programs that many households have little ability to absorb changes in short-term cash flow. And so many solar energy financing programs currently in place that require upfront cash, either in part or in full, are not accessible to a lot of Albertans. Additionally, Yasmin warns us that debt is not considered an adequate financing tool by many who are facing barriers to equitable solar access. Debt is viewed by and large as something to be used only in emergency situations. And although the climate crisis, as we know it, is an emergency, it often wouldn't register in such a way at the household level. This is important to understand when considering solar financing incentives, as even the most generous incentives, such as rebates, often still require that some level of debt is taken on. Another barrier is the inability or lack of time to navigate complex rebate and affordable financing program applications. Some programs enable installers to help clients navigate through these applications, which can help, but not all programs offer that opportunity. Additionally, it must be mentioned that solar installers are routinely unable to complete installations on homes with inadequate roofs or electrical wiring. It's rare that solar financing mechanisms and incentives enable roof and electrical upgrades to be completed along with the solar. This, of course, is a greater problem for low or fixed income households, and so they are often left out of the solar sector as a result. And lastly, though I'm sure there are many factors that I haven't yet listed, Alberta's microgeneration regulation allows home or business owners to adopt solar, and there is little to no incentive for landlords to install solar on homes that they are renting out. Most rebate programs are only for primary residences. One option to address this would be to allow landlords to access rebate programs for multiple residences with proof of occupancy. That said, alternative methods to bring renters into the solar sector must be considered. Before wrapping up our presentation, we want to share 5 exciting methods to help overcome these barriers to adoption.
First, one important option to enable renters and low-income homeowners to participate in the solar sector is, of course, to fully subsidize installations. Alberta EcoTrust and Campbell Energy are working together with the City of Edmonton, the City of Calgary, and ENMAX to develop an equity-based program for energy efficiency upgrades that will see fully subsidized retrofits for those facing significant barriers in this regard. So too, a program should be developed whereby those in the greatest need could have fully subsidized solar installations.
Another technique that a number of non-market affordable housing providers have begun using is to ensure that their buildings are solar integrated and energy efficient from the get-go. Here is an example of a recent net zero townhome completed for large families by the Mennonite Center for Newcomers and Right at Home Housing Society in North Glenora, Edmonton.
This year, the Government of Canada launched their Canada Greener Homes Grant and Loan Program. This new zero-interest federal loan with a 10-year repayment plan, combined with the new $5,000 federal solar grant, is a phenomenal game changer for bringing more folks into the sector. It is extremely important to keep in mind when establishing rebate or loan programs that if the resources available are finite and not everyone can participate, then there should be some income testing component, and folks over a certain annual household income, such as $200,000 a year, should not qualify. This is less relevant federally as they have enough money for most, but it is extremely important at the municipal level, where the dollar figures for rebate and loan programs are much smaller.
Speaking of municipal loan programs, the Clean Energy Improvement Program, also known as CEIP or CEIP, that has begun rolling out in municipalities across Alberta, has the potential to enhance equity in terms of solar generation because of many unique attributes. It is a financing tool that, first of all, doesn't require cash up front. Additionally, the debt that is incurred can be passed on from one homeowner to another, reducing the risk that many barriered individuals might face. One other neat possibility with CEIP is that it can be inclusive of the roof and electrical upgrades that were mentioned earlier as a barrier. Unfortunately, my understanding is that not all municipalities have opted to include roof and electrical upgrades in their CEIP programs, and it also has limited the amount that it will cover. But it is possible, and it is one important consideration for us to ensure the benefits of at-home solar power generation are experienced by the many and not just an elite few. It is important to acknowledge that while CEIP has clearly been developed with equity in mind, there are few, if any, municipalities yet rolling it out in a way that prioritizes low or fixed income homeowners. And it is, of course, still a program that requires home ownership and therefore will not benefit renters or those who have rooftops that are not appropriate for solar. And this leads us to the last tool that we're going to recommend today, which has great potential for enhancing equity in the solar sector and which you can learn a lot more about on Thursday at lunch.
And that is community solar generation. As Heather said, you are going to hear much more about this at the community solar session on Thursday, February 9th over the lunch hour. However, I'll give a brief rundown here. Community generation is essentially where a group of people come together and invest in a solar development that is not on their own property. A number of cooperatives and Indigenous nations are leading the change with community generation in Alberta. Pictured here is the Métis Crossing Solar Farm. This project is a 4.86 megawatt community generation solar installation and is a collaboration between the Métis Nation of Alberta, the town of Smoky Lake, and Smoky Lake County. Community generation is still in its early stages in Alberta, but it will hopefully give apartment dwellers, renters, and others who do not have a solar appropriate roof an opportunity to contribute to solar production in Alberta and experience the associated financial benefits. And with that, I will turn the mic back over to Kim, and I look forward to the question and answer period to follow.
There we go. Stop the screen share while we wait for Kim to join us. And I see that a couple questions are in the Q&A, but not too many. So you might have to prod them a bit, Kim.
Sure, sounds good. We will start with the first question that has appeared in the Q&A from Sackett. The question is, do we know what's happening with the City of Edmonton's rebate program? Currently, they say it's on hold.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. I know Preet and I were very active last fall trying to encourage the City of Edmonton to bring back their rebate program. They had run out of money for it last year. We were successful right before Christmas. We were successful in convincing City Council to bring the program back. They actually amended their budget to include funding for this. And last night, the City of Edmonton came to our keynote address and said that the rebate program will be relaunched soon. The intent is for it to last at least as long as it takes to roll out a full CEIP program in Edmonton. So for those of you who are following the Clean Energy Improvement Program in Edmonton, last year the City of Edmonton launched a pilot program, which I believe ran out of money within about an hour. There was a lot of demand. The City of Calgary just launched their Clean Energy Improvement Program, a fulsome program. And so even though they were overwhelmed with applications within the first day, they haven't run out of money. They just ran out of staff to process applications. So they're still moving ahead with their Clean Energy Improvement Program. And so what Council has funded in Edmonton is money to get the Clean Energy Improvement Program ready. Their goal is to have the residential component rolled out in a fulsome way by the end of this year, hopefully. And in the meantime, they're going to relaunch the rebate program. It may not look the same as it did in the past, We have been encouraging, as you will have heard through our presentation, we've been encouraging them to adopt an equity perspective on that. And if they don't have enough money for everyone, then make sure you prioritize the low and fixed income folks. So yeah, so that's the update right now. Stay tuned. If you're not on our Solar Alberta email list, please join at solaralberta.ca and we'll let you know when it relaunches. But also, if you follow City of Edmonton Change for Climate, I'm sure they'll let you know as soon as that program relaunches.
Great. Thanks for that information. I don't have any other questions yet in the Q&A, so feel free to put that into the Q&A portion if you have any questions. So I'll just start with questions. So you're an employer, there's a lot you're trying to do. Where do you start? How do you get started? Where's the best, most high impact?
What do you think, Preet? What do you think is the biggest bang for your buck if you can't do it all?
I think definitely taking a look at those resources that are provided by Solar Alberta will give you some baseline of how to start, where to start, what things to look at, depending on the type of organization that you are and the employees that you have.
Our new webpage. I know when I first started at Solar Alberta, one of the first things I wanted to make sure we always had the pay listed in all of our job postings, because that has been a barrier for many folks in the past. You know, you don't even know if you should take the time to apply on a job because you don't know if it's going to be better or worse than your current situation. And even just taking the time to apply on a job is harder for folks who are equity seeking or equity deserving. So from an employer perspective, I think just posting the pay is a good first start. It also sends a message, I feel. When I noticed that Solar Alberta included the pay range for my job, it sent me a message that Solar Alberta cared. They were aware that applying on a job takes time and energy. They were thinking about people and in a holistic way. So that sent a really strong message to me that they were an employer who cared. So I would say that is a tiny little thing you can do. And then, yeah, as Preet mentioned, our website has a lot more comprehensive suggestions and ideas and resources. We're
And
not getting, sorry.
And realizing that you want to be equity, you want to have those ESG considerations and provide that to your employees is a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a little bit of critical thinking, hey? Oh, looks like Haley's got a question here.
Sure, I'll pull it out of the chat here. How can individuals help with advocacy for government programs and incentives to be more inclusive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do actually have an Advocate with Us section on our website now, and there are a couple of letters that we have written out as templates. Not every one of our advocacy pieces is always pushing an equity agenda, but most of them do have an equity lens in mind. So for example, we're pushing to try and get the microgeneration regulation amended to allow home and businesses to actually self-supply quite a lot of electricity, but also unlimited export to the grid. You know, this is a push that would theoretically allow individual Albertan homes to have a secondary income source. So all the big solar folks are allowed to generate money from solar, but the little guys currently aren't in Alberta. So that's an idea we had. You can throw out some other ideas at us. We started a conversation with the federal government to try and get them to fix their Canada Greener Homes grant and loan, because right now it requires 85% of financing up front, and then you can get your rebate or your loan after. That doesn't work for a lot of Canadians, so I would say definitely getting in touch with your member of parliament, asking them to look at the Canada Greener Homes grant and loan. They're a great program, but they're not equity oriented in the sense that not a lot of people have 85% of what they need to get started on those projects up front. So they really should provide either more money up front in terms of the financial support, or as we've seen done elsewhere, instead of requiring the person who owns the home or business to pay the installer before they get money back, you can have the government pay the installer directly. That's how the rebate works in Edmonton. In Edmonton, the rebate has worked that way for a long time, and that has enabled homeowners to not have to pay that rebate portion up front. So there are great models out there that exist, and if the federal government followed some of those strong municipal models, it would help with the equity piece. So those are a few ideas, but we're always open to generating more. Promoting the Clean Energy Improvement Program in general is a great equity piece. If you're in a municipality that doesn't yet have that program, you can get in touch with go to myceip.ca, CEIP.ca, and they can tell you how other municipalities have moved forward on that front. You just need your municipality to be willing to pass a sort of a CEIP bylaw and put some financing in place. It's not the easiest, but a number of municipalities have already done it. So you could definitely push your municipality on that if they haven't moved on CEIP yet.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to pop to the next question in the chat. It's a little off topic, but I think still a really great question. It is from an anonymous asker, but being a new installer, how do I get on Solar Alberta's website of registered solar installers?
Yeah, so basically you just have to become a member of Solar Alberta, and you have to sign off on our Solar Code of Conduct. So our Solar Code of Conduct actually does have a few equity pieces in it. It's all about like not lying to people and that sort of basic equity components, and making sure you're advertising in an honest way, and that's really important for people who maybe have a lack of access to information. So we have join us on our website, solaralberta.ca. You can just sign up as a member. It's quite affordable. A small business member, I think last I checked, was only $400. As long as you're willing to sign the code of conduct and join us as a member, then you can be listed on our directory. We do hold all of our members accountable to the code of conduct, so they would not continue to be qualified if they did something shady. We have an ethics committee that does make sure folks are operating ethically in the community. But yeah, most installers in Alberta are, and so they are listed on our registry, and welcome new entrants as well. Solar Alberta in many ways does exist to help new entrants join the field, and we offer a number of courses specifically to help get the new businesses started here. All right.
Great.
We don't have to use all the time, Kim. I'll mention.
Sounds good.
I was like, but I was thinking maybe there's one topic that I wouldn't mind brainstorming with you two while we've got you here, and folks who pop ideas in the chat. We have been getting some pushback lately, and I thought we should maybe have an honest conversation about that today while we've got you here. Focusing on equity doesn't come without a cost. We get some trolls, we get some folks saying, how dare you offer a discount to minorities. We get some people who are extremely offended that we would run an event for women and non-binary folks on International Women's Day. And I don't want to diminish those concerns, but I do want to talk about, if you two have ideas for overcoming some of these frustrations we're hearing in the community. Is it just in your mind, do you think putting up with a certain amount of tension and animosity is just par for the course, and we kind of have to deal with that? Or do you think that there are ways that we can accomplish our diversity and equity objectives without riling up everybody and ticking them all off? Because that's a big question that's been on my mind lately. I'm just curious if you have thoughts about that. Not that we can make everyone happy all the time, but anything that jumps to mind for you about keeping the peace, or?
I think as we do transition to more low carbon economy, we want to make sure that that baggage that is there, we don't want to bring it to something that's new, and we will unfortunately have to deal with these kind of individuals, and it's dealing with them reasonably and with class. I think that's the most important part.
Just taking a respectful tone, and
yes,
understanding not everybody's good. I know you've had pushback in your own work, Kim, when you try and be more inclusive. Not everyone loves that, and you've had to kind of deal with a lot of pushback on that as well in your day job. So
yeah, I think it's treating people with grace. It's, for some people, it's not understanding that it's not about excluding them, it's about including others that have historically been excluded, and that there is room for all. And sometimes that idea of scarcity is so ingrained, but it's not reality. And especially in a growing sector like solar and renewable energy, it is a growing sector. So scarcity isn't really the concern here. There's growth, there's room, but that scarcity is kind of human nature. So finding a bit of grace for people to come along on the journey when they're feeling like suddenly by including people they're excluded, that's a misnomer and maybe not the correct idea. So it's just kind of trying to find respectful space for them. As long as they continue to stay respectful, they will come along the journey. They just have to see that they are not being excluded by including others. And that's the tough thing.
Yeah, it's hard, especially if you're trying to make some space, safe spaces for women and others within the sector. It can feel exclusionary, but one thought I had is sharing more information about our demographics, because it occurred to me that our followers might not be aware that only 10-15% of the people in our classes are women, and so we're nowhere close to gender parity right now. They may not be aware how underrepresented women are at our public events too, and so sharing some of that information, especially now that we've gone online, it might not be readily apparent to everyone. I know when we first started collecting demographic data, we did have a big pushback to that as well. But it's interesting now that we're into our third year of collecting demographic data, we don't get a lot of hate mail about that. People seem to be a little more reconciled to it now. And now we can use that data to help explain why we need different programs and supports in different places. But it's interesting how until you have that information, folks feel like you're pushing them out. They don't necessarily always realize that some folks are actually completely missing. It wasn't until after we collected information our first year that I discovered we had reached 0 Indigenous people 2 years ago in our public programming and in our courses. And I was like, that is appalling in a province with a good chunk of Indigenous people. So hopefully when people learn about that and realize that that our programming was reaching no Indigenous people, they'll understand the need for us to broaden our reach and make sure we're more accessible. So, but no, I really appreciate that. Good. I think me throwing a question at you two has allowed people some time to add a few more questions into the Q&A.
Sure. I'll read those next 2 questions. Also, anyone here, feel free to upvote things, or I'm just kind of going to go in order. So I have a question from Robert, and it's, can a homeowner use both the federal program as well as the municipal program, or are they designed to prevent double dipping?
No, actually, it's so cool. So you can get up to, I think, $90,000 if you combine the SEAP programming with the federal programs. And the Edmonton rebate program has always been made to stack on top of, previously, they've always stacked their rebate with other rebates. So it's quite nice. You should be able to stack. I can't think of any instances where you can't, but if you come across one where you can't stack, please let me know. So I'll change my line on that. But yeah, no, it's really quite amazing. If you decide to do, for example, a deep energy retrofit, you probably need that full $90,000 if you've got an old home and you want to go full meal deal and do the deep energy retrofit. We had Peter Amarangan here for the past 2 solar shows talking about deep energy retrofits, and yeah, he said they can cost around $100,000. So you might need that full amount depending how old and creaky your house is.
Great. So this next one, we'll give a bit of background and maybe you guys can kind of talk about this, but most solar sales are commission, but there's no base wage. The challenge for most is getting started or switching industries, myself included. I tried in 2018 and had to leave solar to maintain what I established. How can this be changed? I recently came from the home construction industry where I had even a small base pay and very masculine role previously, O&G chemical sector in the field where pay was much higher range with many bonuses. So can you guys kind of talk about that?
Yeah, the sales side of solar. So, I mean, one of the reasons we're pushing hard on this, in all honesty, is because we have noticed a challenge with the solar sector not always being, following best practices in terms of employment. And so we're really trying to push our members to think hard about a living wage, regardless. So that is something we're working on, and I'm sorry we're not more ahead. We do, though, on our directory have well over 150 business members. And some of them are desperate for staff. So one thing you could do is literally call through all those employers and say, do you have a base wage for sales? If you have a base wage, then apply there. Because I think out of 150, there's a pretty good chance you're going to find one or two. And I know that's a lot of work, but if you can help them set the trend, and if they know the demand is there for that, hopefully they can start moving in that direction. I would say there are some right now that are posting needing staff constantly every Wednesday. We have a solar jobs roundup that we push out to our followers on social media. And you'll see some companies are growing so fast. You'll see the same names over and over and over because the growth is huge. And so I would really encourage you to have some conversations with those folks and say, look, I see you're continually trying to hire sales. I would do it if you had a base wage, and I would be happy to apply. So definitely have those awkward conversations. I also think you should consider alternative jobs within the solar sector. So sales is a hard space to get into, obviously, but they're hiring for a wide variety of jobs. And if you're good with people, you could be good with a variety of people-oriented positions in an organization. And so look for some of those other postings. They're hiring HR folks. I'm sure an HR position will come with a base wage, So try and diversify your skill set. Solar sales might be the toughest one to break in terms of a base wage, but there are other positions that will come with a base wage. So see if you can diversify your skill set, maybe chat with a few employers about what kind of experience they would need to consider you for some of those alternative jobs that do come with a base wage. And yeah, so let's have that conversation more frequently, and thank you. And if you do find employers, especially within our membership, who are offering a base wage for sale, please let us know, and we will actually publicly celebrate them. Because maybe what we need to do is start offering a little bit more celebration of our members who are heading in the right direction.
Great. And I see in the chat that Government International offers base and profit sharing to their employees. So that's good news. There's one we can celebrate publicly.
There we go. Bravo. It's a very competitive space. And so they need to hear what you want, right? Because a lot of folks are saying, we can't get enough employees. Well, okay, tweak your postings, right? And here are the ways you can tweak your postings. So give them that feedback. Some of them might not be even aware of what other industries are doing. It's fascinating. If you've been in the solar sector, let's say you've been running a solar business for 10, 15 years, you might not even know what the industry standards are in the other building sectors. And so just letting them know, hey, you're behind the times. This is important feedback for them to hear. And that's part of why we started our group health benefits program, because we noticed a lot of solar employers haven't upped their benefits game, even though they're trying to attract and retain staff. And so we're trying to give them some tips and tricks that way by making it easier for them to be a good employer.
Excellent. We have a new question. It's a quick one, but the Solar Alberta identify as a B Corp employers, employee owned?
Do we identify them? So what we have is an online directory where all of our members are actually allowed to kind of post about themselves, and they create their own little posting. So you will see on there that a number of them have actually on their directory, they are celebrating that they are a B Corp. And so if you go through our directory and you look at the installers or whoever you're looking for, and you can see if they're a B Corp or not. We haven't actually done a rah-rah to that, but maybe that's a good idea for this year. We could let our members know if they're a B Corp, they should let us know and we could celebrate that. So we're definitely a great idea to start moving in that direction. Maybe we'll make a little list of all the different things we want to celebrate. I know also on the not so diversity related, but on a broader equity front, some of our members are also starting to actually go green themselves from a manufacturing perspective. We also want to celebrate that, and Solar Alberta just took the plunge, and we started actually offsetting all of our electricity use for our little remote office. So we're definitely encouraging people on that front, which actually relates to climate justice more broadly. Preet and I were chatting about this in preparing for the presentation, and you know, if you're really committed to equity and from a global perspective, then making sure you're supporting businesses and companies and working for companies and encouraging companies to offset their own emissions is a way to start working on global climate justice. So no, thanks for mentioning that. We'll have to look at different ways to celebrate our members and some of the good equity and diversity work they're doing.
Excellent. Well, I don't have any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to do, oh, one just came up. So we'll do this one quickly, it says, I'm inclined to install solar panels and become a micro generator and would like to sell electricity to the grid as much as possible, but current regulations limit generation not beyond my needs. So can we expect regulation revised to all homeowners to do so?
Oh, Preet, if only. So, Kuldeep, thank you for this. We are working on that. Preet and I, you know, and the whole board, we've been working really hard to try and get the micro generation regulation changed. You are not alone. We hear from Albertans all the time who are frustrated by the limitation. The microgen regulation states you can only produce as much as you consumed within the past year, which was fine and dandy for a while. That was amazing. In fact, that was incredible for many years because, you know, prior to the microgeneration regulation existing, it was actually really hard to even do that in Alberta. So that was great. But we really want to take it to the next level. We are pushing hard. We have asked every minister imaginable within Alberta if they could make this change. So far, they're saying no. What they're saying is if you want to produce more than you consume, they're asking you to work within the small scale generation regulation. Which can be fairly onerous. So it's not impossible to work within the small scale generation regulation, but you will probably need to talk to a consultant or two from our directory to ask them what that's all about and how to do it. And there will be more hoops to jump through. The micro generation regulation is really nice and simple, tight package. You can get through the inspections quick, but it doesn't allow for that. So I encourage you, Kuldeep, as well. Another option is to come to our community generation session on Thursday, because I too have maxed out my roof and I'm not allowed to generate much more electricity. However, I could theoretically invest in a community generation initiative, which is basically leasing a space on someone else's roof and, you know, generating solar with a group of people. So you can do community generation. You could explore the small scale generation regulation. And we're just going to keep working hard, pushing government to try and update the micro generation regulation and join us. This is a letter we have on our webpage under Advocate With Us is to write the government of Alberta, write your MLA, ask them to change that regulation. And in the upcoming provincial election, feel free to ask all the candidates running in your area whether they would consider updating the microgen regulation. Maybe they don't want to allow unlimited self-supply and export, but maybe they would consider even allowing unlimited export up to 500 kilowatts or something, right? So let's keep talking about this because I think a lot of Albertans are agitating for that, especially farmers, actually. Kuldeep, you're going to have great solidarity with the farmers. So definitely keep chatting because the farmers are right ticked off that they're capped at their production is capped. They would like to be able to produce a lot more with the solar resource that they have.
Great. Thank you for that question and answer. So I have another question in the chat. It is a bit like we're kind of veering into a different topic than equity. So I'm
That's all right.
gonna give us this question. And again, this is kind of going to be our last call for questions. If you have any, get them into that chat so we can, or into that question and answer section so we can get to them. Otherwise, we'll get closing thoughts from Heather and Preet at the end here. But the question is, what are the city's guidelines around maxing out your roof?
So municipalities don't actually set the guidelines for how much solar you can install. That's all decided by the province of Alberta. So they have the microgeneration regulation, which states that you can only produce as much as you consumed within the last year. So if you're considering solar, you're going to want to talk to an installer and ask them to give you a quote. And they're going to say, give me the last 12 months of energy bills. Give me your last 12 months of bills. And they'll take that and they'll look to see how much energy you used last year. They'll look at your roof and they'll let you know, okay, you're allowed an array this big on your roof to offset your consumption over a year. Depending on the size of your roof, depending on the amount of electricity you've used, it's going to differ. And it also differ from region to region because, of course, the solar resource in southern Alberta is superior to northern Alberta. So you can have a bigger array in northern Alberta to produce the same amount of energy as you would with a smaller array in Lethbridge. So definitely request 3 quotes. We always say go to our request. We have a RFP on our website. We also have our directory. Hit up at least 3 installers, get them to give you quotes. They should all size it very similarly. The municipality will be in charge of inspecting it and making sure like it meets all the structural requirements, as well as your local distributor, such as EPCOR or ENMAX or ATCO or Fortis. They'll make sure that the installer has sized it appropriately. So, but all 3 quotes should have similar sizing. And if one person's given you a quote way bigger than the others, there's a good chance that before that gets approved by your distributor, you're going to have to take a bunch of those panels off. So hopefully nobody would do that to you, though. We actually offer a course that helps any of our business members or anyone from the public figure out, the cost of solar and the economics of it, and hopefully have some conversations about sizing and whatnot as well. So yeah, so there should be no excuse. They should be able to size you properly. And yeah, sadly, currently it may not be your full roof that is eligible. I see a few more questions in the chat. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there are a few in the chat, so I will try and grab those out of the chat. So some new home builders now install PV. If I were to buy one of those and after a year my electrical use was small, would I be required to disconnect a panel or 2?
No, you wouldn't. So they will. So if the new homeowner is building with solar on it, that means that they have already received approval for a sort of a standard size. So it'll be kind of a standard, and they usually kind of underestimate, right? So you would almost never experience, sadly, they're probably going to underestimate your usage. If they happen to overestimate it, lucky for you. The same goes, let's say I'm using a lot of electricity one year, like, okay, what's a good example? I have an electric vehicle and I'm using a lot of electricity one year. If I get my system sized for my electric vehicle and then in 2 years I decide to go carless, I do not have to lower the size of my installation. So I'm actually planning to do that because I have an EV now because I have kids, and then as soon as they move out, I'm getting rid of it because I don't like cars. So, I'm going to actually go carless once those kids move out, and then theoretically I will be oversized. And so, yes, that's okay, and they don't expect you to know the future. They just expect you to know the past. And so your home builder, if they're building with solar, will have the approval for a standard kind of new home build, and you're okay. All of those decisions are made in a backwards looking way. They're not really made in a forwards looking way. In fact, that's the bigger frustration, because some people say, I'm planning to buy an EV, but you're not allowed to be sized for an EV until you literally have it, or you have the sales receipt saying you paid for it or something. And that's actually where people get more frustrated. You may find that you have a solar array from your home builder and that it's too small, and then you actually apply for one of the rebates to actually increase the size over time, especially as more and more vehicles and appliances become electrified. We're probably going to see the exact opposite, where everybody's suddenly saying, oh, I've got an e-bike now, I guess I better put more on my roof.
Right. So Andre asks, talking about microgeneration, I've installed a heat pump and installed enough solar panels to support my new installed heat pump, but EPCOR's refusing to include the heat pump consumption in the microgen agreement. Is there something I can do?
Yeah, that sounds like there's something off there. So I'm confused by it, because you should be able, anything that's drawing from your electricity or adding to your electricity should be okay. So maybe just email me and I'll make some inquiries through EPCOR, because that's very contrary to my understanding. My understanding is if you add a heat pump, or as long as it's air source, that it should be no issue to have that added on. But thank you for alerting me to this issue. My understanding was heat pumps would be treated the same as an EV, and that if you add it onto your system, you should be able to add on electricity, add on solar. So that's very confusing to learn. So yeah, definitely reach out to me. I'm just at heather@solaralberta.ca. I'll put my email in the chat, and I'll contact EPCOR because that's a very important piece. And if they're not for everyone, then we have some advocacy. We have some more advocacy to do, Kim and Preet. I know last night, for example, we had our keynote speaker from the ISO, and they were talking about heat pumps and about EVs and about the extra pressure that was going to put on the electricity grid. So they're well aware that this is related to electricity, and my understanding was you'd be able to offset that. And I think that's super cool that you're going green with your heating. So awesome. I'll look into that for you. And if we need to launch a new round of advocacy, we will, because I'm all for the electrification of home heating.
Great. Well, that ends kind of the questions. No one has any new ones. So I'm going to give you guys a chance to give any final closing thoughts you may have before we wrap up and let people go.
Yeah, thanks. I think my only closing thought is just to encourage all of those attendees, if you see good resources out there, if you're doing something we haven't talked about, I would really appreciate it if you email us. We are constantly evolving this presentation and trying to make sure that we have the latest and greatest in sort of the to-do list, both for employers, but also in ways that the solar sector as a whole could be more equitable. And so definitely throw more of your ideas our way. You've got my email now in the chat. We are trying to speak about this because nobody is, but we are not the experts on this. I'm just not sure who is. So we're actually frantically trying to become experts on this because we hear this talked about so rarely. And so, yeah, so if you have expertise to share, please send it along. If you have experiences to share, things that you think people could be doing differently, we'd love to integrate that into future presentations and into our website. And just into our general knowledge and understanding. Preet, I'll turn the mic over to you for any final words as well.
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much. If you're here, you care, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for your time and your energy for joining us today.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you all. We'll let you return back to your day. I hope you join us for more of the solar show. We'd love to see you out, and we'll continue to amplify voices and do this great work all together. Thank you.